Welcome, dear listener, and thank you for joining me on this gentle journey through the mists of time. As the world around you settles into quietness, I invite you to breathe deeply and allow yourself to drift into a softer state of mind. Perhaps you are lying in bed, perhaps seated in your favorite chair. Wherever you are in this moment, know that you are safe, you are comfortable, and you are about to embark on a peaceful voyage to a civilization that flourished along the banks of a great river thousands of years ago. If you find comfort in stories such as these, stories that carry you gently towards sleep while satisfying your curiosity about the past, I hope you will return again. There are so many quiet corners of history waiting to be explored together in the nights to come. Tonight, we travel to ancient Kemet, the land we now know as Egypt. During a time when the sun blazed eternally over golden sands and the great river brought life to an otherwise barren landscape. We will walk through palace corridors where the air was heavy with the scent of precious incense. We will observe the careful rituals of daily life among those who held power in this ancient world. We will learn about the customs of courtship, the traditions of diplomacy, and the intricate social structures that held this civilization together for more than 3,000 years. This is not a story of battles or conquests, though such things certainly occurred. Rather, this is a story of the quieter moments. The conversations held in garden courtyards, the careful selection of fabrics for ceremonial robes, the preparation of elaborate meals, the subtle negotiations that took place over cups of wine, the slow, measured pace of palace life where every gesture carried meaning, and every interaction was guided by centuries of accumulated wisdom and tradition. Let us begin our journey as the sun rises over the eastern desert, casting its first golden rays across the great palace at Wasit, a city we might recognize today as Thebes. The palace complex sprawls across many acres of carefully tended grounds. Gardens filled with date palms and sycamore trees provide shade from the relentless sun. Pools of water, fed by channels from the great river, reflect the changing colors of the sky throughout the day. Walkways of smooth stone connect various buildings, each serving its own purpose in the intricate machinery of royal governance. In the private quarters of the palace, the Lady Nefret is beginning her morning routine. Nefret is not the ruling monarch, but rather a high-ranking member of the royal household, a woman whose family has served the crown for generations. Her apartments consist of several interconnected chambers, each decorated with painted scenes of daily life along the river. Birds wading in shallow water, farmers harvesting grain, children playing beneath the shade of trees. These images are not merely decorative. They serve to remind those who dwell within these walls of the kingdom they serve, of the people whose welfare depends upon the wisdom and diligence of their leaders. As dawn light begins to filter through the high windows of Nefret's sleeping chamber, her personal attendants enter quietly. These are not servants in the manner we might imagine. They are skilled professionals, women who have trained for years in the arts of hospitality and personal care. The head attendant, a woman named Merit, has served in this capacity for more than 20 years. She knows Nefret's preferences as well as she knows her own. She understands which morning rituals will best prepare her mistress for the day ahead, which might include ceremonial duties, administrative meetings, or diplomatic receptions. Merit moves silently through the chamber, opening certain windows to allow fresh morning air to circulate, while keeping others shuttered against the growing heat of the day. She lights small oil lamps that burn fragrant oils, filling the room with gentle scents of lotus and myrrh. These are not strong or overpowering aromas, but rather subtle fragrances that ease the transition from sleep to wakefulness. The process of awakening in an ancient, Kemetic palace is gradual and gentle. There is no harsh clanging of bells or sudden intrusions. Instead, the sleeper is allowed to drift naturally toward consciousness, supported by carefully orchestrated sensory experiences. The soft light, the pleasant aromas, the distant sound of water flowing in the courtyard fountain, the cool morning breeze carrying the calls of birds greeting the new day. When Nefret's eyes finally open, she finds Merit waiting patiently nearby with a small cup of herbal infusion. This morning beverage is prepared according to recipes that have been passed down through generations of palace physicians. It contains herbs that promote mental clarity and physical vitality without causing the kind of jarring alertness that might disturb the peaceful atmosphere of the early morning. The herbs are grown in special gardens within the palace grounds, tended by specialists who understand the proper times for planting and harvesting to ensure maximum beneficial properties. Nefret sits up slowly, accepting the cup from Merit's hands. She sips the warm liquid gradually, allowing its gentle effects to spread through her body. There is no rush, no urgency. The palace operates according to rhythms that have been established over centuries, and those rhythms allow ample time for each activity to unfold at its natural pace. As Nefret finishes her morning beverage, other attendants enter the chamber, carrying various items needed for the bathing ritual. Large vessels of water that has been warmed by the morning sun, soft cloths woven from the finest linen, small bottles containing oils and unguents prepared by palace cosmeticians. These preparations are not merely for the purpose of cleanliness or beauty, though they certainly serve those functions. They are part of a comprehensive approach to physical and mental well-being that considers the connection between bodily comfort and emotional equilibrium. The bathing chamber adjacent to Nefret's sleeping quarters is a marvel of ancient engineering and aesthetic refinement. The floor is constructed of smooth limestone that remains cool even in the heat of midday. Along one wall runs a low bench, also of limestone, where one might sit while being attended. In the center of the room is a large basin carved from a single piece of granite, polished to a smooth finish over many months of patient labor. The basin is filled with water that has been carried from the river, then filtered through beds of sand and gravel to remove any impurities. Merit and the other attendants help Nefret step into the basin, supporting her arms as she settles into the comfortable warmth of the water. They begin the bathing process with slow, methodical movements. Using soft claws, they gently cleanse her skin, starting with her feet and gradually working upward. The water is infused with oils that have been extracted from various plants. Some of these oils are prized for their pleasing fragrances. Others are valued for their ability to soften and nourish the skin. Still others are believed to possess protective properties, warding off various ailments and maintaining general health. As the bathing continues, conversation flows naturally among the women. Merit might mention that the head gardener has reported the pomegranate trees are flowering beautifully this season. Another attendant might share news that her sister, who serves in a noble household in another city, has recently married. These exchanges are not idle gossip, though they might appear so to an outsider. They are part of the intricate web of information that flows constantly through the palace, keeping those in positions of responsibility informed about conditions throughout the kingdom. The bathing ritual concludes after perhaps half an hour, though time is not measured in such precise increments in this ancient world. When Nefret emerges from the basin, she is wrapped in layers of soft linen that absorb the remaining water from her skin. She is then led to a cushioned seat where the next phase of the morning routine begins. The application of oils and unguents is performed with the same careful attention as the bathing. Merit selects from among dozens of small vessels, each containing a different preparation. Some are thick and creamy, designed to provide lasting moisture to the skin. Others are thin and quickly absorbed, leaving only a subtle sheen and a delicate fragrance. The selection depends on many factors. The season of the year, which affects the dryness of the air. The activities planned for the day, which might require different levels of protection against sun or wind. Even Nefert's current state of health and mood might influence which preparations are chosen. As the oils are being applied, another attendant begins the process of arranging Nefert's hair. In ancient Kemet, hair care is considered an important aspect of personal presentation, particularly for those of high rank. The natural hair might be braided in intricate patterns, or it might be covered entirely by an elaborate wig. The wigs worn by nobility are not simple hairpieces. They are carefully constructed works of art, made from human hair that has been cleaned, dyed if necessary, and woven into complex designs. Some wigs include decorative elements, such as small beads of gold or semi-precious stones that catch the light when the wearer moves. The furniture is elegantly simple. Low tables surrounded by cushioned stools. Serving stands where platters of food are arranged. Tall stands holding vessels of wine and water. The walls are decorated with painted scenes of agricultural abundance. Fields of grain heavy with harvest. Orchards laden with fruit. Gardens overflowing with vegetables and flowers. These images serve to remind those who dine here of the source of their sustenance and the importance of maintaining the agricultural systems that support the entire civilization. As Nefert enters the dining chamber, she exchanges greetings with those already present. The greetings are formal but warm, reflecting the complex social hierarchies that govern interactions in palace life. To someone of equal or slightly lower status, she might bow her head slightly and speak a traditional phrase of blessing. To someone of higher status, she would bow more deeply and wait for them to speak first. These protocols are not rigid or oppressive. They are simply the established ways of showing respect and maintaining harmonious relationships within a complex social structure. The morning meal that is served represents the work of many skilled individuals. The palace employs numerous cooks, each specializing in different types of preparation. Some focus on baking bread, a staple of the Kemetic diet. The bread comes in many varieties, from simple round loaves perfect for tearing and dipping in oil or sauce, to more elaborate creations flavored with honey, seeds, or dried fruit. Other cooks specialize in preparing meats and fish. Ducks and geese raised in palace poultry yards. Fish caught fresh from the great river. Occasionally, more exotic meats from animals hunted in the desert or imported from distant lands. Vegetables and fruits are abundant, reflecting the agricultural richness of the river valley. Onions and garlic, staples of Kemetic cuisine, appear in almost every meal. Cucumbers, lettuce, and other fresh vegetables provide crisp textures and refreshing flavors. Dates and figs offer natural sweetness. Pomegranates, when in season, are prized for their complex flavor and the beautiful color of their juice. The meal proceeds at a leisurely pace. There is time for conversation between courses. Time to appreciate the flavors and textures of each dish. Time to simply sit in the pleasant morning air and watch the play of light and shadow in the courtyard garden. The topics of conversation range widely. One of the visiting scholars describes his research into ancient medical texts, attempting to understand the treatments used by physicians in previous generations. Another discusses recent observations of the night sky, noting the changing positions of various stars and planets. Nefert contributes observations about the upcoming diplomatic visit, sharing background information about the visitors and their homeland. These breakfast conversations serve important functions beyond mere socializing. They allow for the exchange of information between different groups within the palace. The scholars gain insight into political and administrative matters that might affect their work. The administrators and courtiers learn about developments in various fields of knowledge that might have practical applications. Everyone benefits from the opportunity to engage with intelligent and well-informed individuals whose perspectives differ from their own. As the meal concludes, The various participants gradually take their leave, each departing to attend to their respective responsibilities. Nefert returns to her private chambers for a brief period of quiet reflection before the diplomatic reception begins. This interval of solitude is an important part of the daily rhythm. It provides an opportunity to mentally review the information shared during breakfast, to consider how it might relate to the day's upcoming activities, and to prepare oneself emotionally and intellectually for the challenges and opportunities ahead. Nefert sits in her private reception room, a small chamber furnished with comfortable seating and decorated with a selection of beautiful objects that bring her pleasure. A small statue of Hathor, goddess of joy and music, carved from gleaming black stone. A potted plant with delicate white flowers that release their fragrance in the cool of morning and evening. A low table holding several scrolls, including a collection of poetry that Nefert enjoys reading during her rare moments of leisure. As she sits quietly, Nefert reflects on the upcoming reception and the diplomatic goals it serves. The visiting dignitaries represent a neighboring territory that produces copper, a vital material for tool-making and various other purposes. Kemet has its own copper sources, but demand consistently exceeds local supply, making trade relationships with copper-producing regions extremely important. The purpose of this visit is to strengthen the existing trade agreement and possibly expand it to include other goods. However, diplomacy in the ancient world is never simply a matter of exchanging goods for agreed-upon prices. Every interaction carries layers of meaning and implication. The manner in which guests are received communicates respect or disrespect for their homeland. The generosity of gifts offered suggests the value placed on the relationship. Even small details of protocol and ceremony can have significant impact on the outcome of negotiations. Nefert's role in the reception is primarily representational rather than decisional. She will not be negotiating the specific terms of trade agreements. That work will be done by specialized administrators who understand the complexities of commodity, pricing, and transport logistics. Instead, Nefert's responsibility is to create an atmosphere of welcome and mutual respect that will facilitate those negotiations. She must make the visitors feel honored by their reception, while simultaneously demonstrating Kemet's sophistication and prosperity. As the time approaches for the reception to begin, Merit returns to help Nefert with final preparations. A fresh application of perfume to ensure the fragrance remains pleasant throughout the event. A check of the jewelry to ensure all clasps are secure. A final adjustment of the pleated dress to ensure it drapes perfectly. These last-moment attentions might seem excessive, but they reflect the understanding that confidence in one's appearance contributes to confidence in one's performance. Of social and ceremonial duties, the reception will take place in one of the palace's formal audience chambers, a large room designed specifically for welcoming important visitors. The chamber is impressive without being overwhelming. The ceiling is supported by columns carved and painted to resemble bundles of papyrus reeds, the plant that grows abundantly along the riverbanks and has come to symbolize the northern regions of the kingdom. The floor is paved with stone that has been polished to a smooth, lustrous finish. The walls bear painted scenes of the king presiding over ceremonies of tribute, receiving gifts from various peoples who trade with Kemet. Seating for the ceremony is arranged hierarchically, but not in a way that would make anyone feel excluded or disrespected. At one end of the chamber stands a raised platform where the king's throne would be positioned if he were personally presiding over the event. Since this is a relatively routine diplomatic reception, the king's representative, a high-ranking official named Amenhotep, will occupy a less imposing seat positioned to one side of the platform. The visiting dignitaries will be seated directly facing him, in positions that allow for easy conversation while still maintaining appropriate dignity. Other members of the palace household, including Nefrit, will be seated along the sides of the chamber, creating an audience that witnesses the proceedings without directly participating in them. This arrangement serves multiple purposes. It demonstrates to the visitors that their reception is considered important, enough to merit the attendance of numerous high-ranking individuals. It provides those individuals with the opportunity to observe the visitors and form their own assessments. And it creates a sense of ceremonial occasion that elevates the event beyond a simple business meeting. As the appointed hour arrives, the various participants take their assigned positions. Musicians carrying harps and flutes enter and begin playing softly. The music is gentle and pleasant, neither so quiet as to go unnoticed, nor so loud as to impede conversation. It fills the spaces between speech, creating an atmosphere of civilized refinement. The foreign dignitaries are announced by a palace herald, who calls out their names and titles in a clear, formal voice. They enter the chamber in a small procession, led by their chief representative, a man named Kemet. He is accompanied by several advisors and attendants, including a scribe who will record the proceedings for their homeland's archives. As they enter, Kemet and his companions pause to observe the chamber, taking in the painted decorations, the assembled household members, and the overall impression of organized prosperity. This momentary pause is traditional and expected. It allows the visitors to orient themselves to the space and demonstrates that they are not rushing carelessly into the presence of their hosts. Amenhotep rises from his seat to greet the visitors formally. He speaks words of welcome that follow traditional formulas, acknowledging the visitors' safe journey, expressing pleasure at their arrival, and invoking blessings for successful discussions. His tone is warm but maintains appropriate dignity. He is representing the king and the entire kingdom of Kemet, and his bearing must reflect that responsibility. Farmers throughout the valley sow their seeds in the damp, nourished soil. Barley and emmer wheat, the primary grain crops that form the foundation of the Kemetic diet. Flax, which will be harvested and processed to create linen thread. Various vegetables including onions, garlic, lettuce, and cucumbers. The growing season extends through the cooler months of autumn and winter, with the harvest occurring in late winter and early spring before the cycle begins. Again, the palace receives a portion of the harvest from royal estates as well as from taxes paid by other agricultural properties throughout the kingdom. These incoming goods must be recorded, stored appropriately, and managed to ensure adequate supplies throughout the year. The granaries where grain is stored are massive structures, designed to protect their contents from moisture, pests, and theft. The administrators who manage these facilities must maintain meticulous records of what comes in and what goes out, ensuring accountability and allowing for planning based on current supplies and projected needs. Similar supply chains exist for other goods that the palace requires. The linen used for clothing and household textiles comes from workshops where flax fibers are spun into thread, then woven into fabric. The process is labor-intensive, requiring many hours of work to produce even modest quantities of finished material. The finest quality linen, woven so finely that it is almost transparent, requires exceptional skill and can only be produced by the most experienced weavers. The precious materials used in jewelry and decorative arts come from various sources, some relatively nearby and others quite distant. Gold is found in the desert regions east of the river valley, where mining operations extract ore from the earth under harsh and dangerous conditions. Copper comes from the Sinai Peninsula and from regions to the northeast, obtained through trade relationships like the one being cultivated with the current visiting dignitaries. Semi-precious stones like carnelian and turquoise are found in desert areas, while lapis lazuli must be imported from lands far to the east. carried along trade routes that span thousands of miles. These supply chains represent remarkable organizational achievements, coordinating the activities of thousands of people across vast distances, ensuring that goods reach their intended destinations in good condition, maintaining quality standards and fair practices. All of this requires sophisticated administrative systems and reliable communication methods. The palace sits at the center of this complex web of economic relationships. Its needs drive demand for various goods, providing livelihood for countless workers and craftspeople. Its administrative systems establish standards and practices that influence how business is conducted throughout the kingdom. Its diplomatic relationships open or close trade routes that affect prosperity across entire regions. Yet the palace's role extends beyond mere economics. It serves as a center of religious life, hosting ceremonies that are believed to maintain cosmic order and ensure divine favor. It serves as a center of legal authority, where disputes are resolved and justice is administered. It serves as a center of cultural production, where artists and writers create works that express and shape the kingdom's identity. Consider the temples that are associated with the palace complex. These are not separate institutions, but rather integrated parts of the same overall structure. The temples serve religious functions, providing spaces where priests can perform the daily rituals, believed necessary to maintain proper relationships with the gods. But they also serve economic functions as major landowners and employers. They serve educational functions as centers where knowledge is preserved and transmitted. They serve social functions as gathering places where the community comes together for festivals and celebrations. The priests who serve in these temples occupy a special position in Kemetic society. They are not simply religious officials in the narrow sense that modern people might understand. They are also scholars, teachers, physicians, and administrators. The extensive training required to become a priest includes not just religious instruction, but also education in writing, mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and various other fields of knowledge. This integration of religious and secular functions reflects a worldview quite different from what predominates in modern societies. In ancient Kemet, there is no sharp boundary between sacred and profane, between religious life and everyday existence. The gods are understood to be intimately involved in all aspects of reality, from the flooding of the river to the growth of crops to the health of individuals to the outcome of diplomatic negotiations. When palace officials like Kemet make administrative decisions, they do so within a framework that assumes divine involvement and concern. When noblewomen like Nefret prepare for diplomatic receptions, they understand their actions as contributing to cosmic order and harmony. When servants like Merit perform their daily duties, they see their work as having spiritual significance beyond its immediate practical purposes. This religious consciousness permeates palace life without making it somber or oppressive. On the contrary, it provides meaning and significance to activities that might otherwise seem routine or mundane. It connects the individual to something larger than themselves, creating a sense of purpose and direction that sustains people through difficult times and enhances their enjoyment of pleasant ones. The calendar that organizes palace life is structured around religious observances. Major festivals occur at regular intervals throughout the year, marking important points in the agricultural cycle and commemorating mythological events. These festivals provide breaks from normal routines, opportunities for celebration and renewal. They also serve to strengthen social bonds, as people from different levels of society come together in shared observance. One such festival, occurring during the period we have been observing, celebrates the harvest and gives thanks to the gods for their generosity in providing abundant crops. Preparations for the festival have been ongoing for weeks, involving numerous people and extensive resources. Decorations must be created, special foods prepared, ceremonial garments cleaned and repaired. Musical performances rehearsed. As the festival day approaches, the pace of palace life intensifies. There is excitement in the air, a sense of anticipation and collective purpose. The visiting dignitaries will still be present for the festival, and their participation in the celebrations will be noted and appreciated, strengthening the diplomatic relationships that are being cultivated. The festival begins at dawn with processions of priests carrying sacred objects from the temples to the palace courtyard where the main ceremonies will take place. The priests wear elaborate costumes, including masks and headdresses that represent various deities. They chant ancient prayers as they process, their voices rising and falling in rhythms that have been performed for centuries. As the sun rises higher, members of the royal household and other nobles gather to witness the ceremonies. Nefert is among them, dressed in her finest clothing, her jewelry catching and reflecting the morning light. Senenmet stands in a position appropriate to his administrative rank, observing the proceedings while remaining alert for any logistical issues that might arise. Merit and other servants watch from less prominent positions, but their presence is part of the communal nature of the event. The central ceremony involves offerings being presented to the gods, platters of bread representing the harvest of grain, jars of beer and wine, cuts of meat from sacrificial animals, fresh fruits and vegetables. These offerings symbolize the community's gratitude for divine blessings and their hope for continued favor in the coming year. After the offerings are presented, the highest-ranking priest delivers a homily, speaking about the proper relationship between humans and gods, the importance of maintaining cosmic order through righteous action, and the specific blessings that the kingdom has received during the past year. His words are formulaic in some respects, following traditional patterns, but they are also adapted to current circumstances, acknowledging recent events and looking forward to future possibilities. When the main ceremony concludes, the atmosphere shifts from formal solemnity to joyful celebration. Musicians begin playing lively melodies. Dancers perform, their movements telling stories from mythology. Food and drink are distributed freely, not just to nobles and officials, but to everyone present, including servants and even some members of the general public who have been allowed into the palace grounds for the occasion. Throughout the day, various entertainments continue. Acrobats demonstrate amazing feats of physical skill. Storytellers recount tales of gods and heroes. Magicians perform tricks that astonish and delight their audiences. Wrestling matches and other athletic competitions provide excitement. The entire palace complex becomes a space of celebration, with normal hierarchies relaxed though not entirely dissolved. Nefert finds herself in conversation with one of the foreign dignitaries, discussing the differences and similarities between how their respective peoples celebrate the harvest. She learns that his homeland has similar festivals, though the specific rituals differ in details. This exchange of cultural information is valuable, deepening mutual understanding and respect. It also provides Nefert with knowledge that might prove useful in future diplomatic interactions. Senenmet, true to his nature, spends much of the day ensuring that the logistical aspects of the celebration proceed smoothly. He coordinates with kitchen staff to ensure adequate food supplies are available. He arranges for additional seating when certain areas become crowded. He responds to a dozen small crises that arise throughout the day, solving problems before they can disrupt the festivities. Yet, despite his administrative focus, he also finds moments to simply enjoy the celebration, to partake of the special foods, to watch the entertainments, to feel the sense of communal joy that permeates the occasion. Merit, released from her normal duties for much of the day, enjoys the rare freedom to simply participate in the celebrations without responsibility weighing on her. She watches the dancers with appreciation, admiring their skill and grace. She samples foods that are not normally part of her diet, treats reserved for special occasions. She reunites with old friends from her earlier days of palace service, catching up on their lives and reminiscing about shared experiences. As evening falls and the festival day draws to its conclusion, a sense of satisfaction settles over the palace community. The ceremonies were performed properly, honoring the gods and maintaining cosmic order. The celebrations were enjoyable, providing pleasure and strengthening social bonds. The visitors from foreign lands participated fully, demonstrating respect for Kemetic customs and solidifying diplomatic relationships. The aftermath of the festival requires considerable work to restore the palace to its normal state. Decorations must be taken down and stored. Special furnishings must be returned to their usual locations. The palace grounds must be cleaned. All of this work begins immediately after the festival concludes, with servants working through the night to have everything ready for the resumption of normal routines the following day. Yet, no one complains about this post-festival work. It is understood as part of the natural cycle, necessary labor that makes possible the extraordinary moments of celebration. Moreover, the memory of the festival's joys helps sustain people through the more routine days that follow. As our gentle journey through palace life in ancient Kemet approaches its conclusion, let us step back to consider the broader patterns and principles that we have observed. What can these glimpses into a long-vanished world teach us? What wisdom might we carry forward from these ancient practices? Perhaps the most striking feature of the palace life we have explored is its integration of different aspects of human existence: religious observance, political administration, economic activity, artistic creation, personal relationships. All these dimensions of life are woven together into a seamless whole rather than being compartmentalized into separate spheres. This integration is not accidental, but reflects a coherent worldview, a way of understanding reality that sees everything as interconnected and mutually influencing. The gods care about administrative efficiency. Political negotiations have spiritual dimensions. Personal relationships affect cosmic order. Economic prosperity depends on religious observances. This holistic perspective creates lives that are rich in meaning, where even mundane tasks participate in larger purposes. Another notable feature is the emphasis on ritual and routine. The morning preparations, the communal meals, the evening gatherings, these repeated activities create rhythms that structure time and provide stability. In a world where so much is uncertain and unpredictable, these reliable patterns offer psychological security and social cohesion. Yet, within these established patterns, there is also space for flexibility and adaptation. The rituals are not rigid straitjackets, but rather flexible frameworks that can accommodate changing circumstances while maintaining their essential character. Nefret's morning routine follows the same basic pattern every day, but the specific details vary based on the day's requirements. The palace's administrative systems have established procedures, but Senenmut can adapt them when situations demand creative solutions. This balance between structure and flexibility, between tradition and innovation, seems to be key to the system's long-term stability. Ancient Kemet maintained its essential character for more than 3,000 years, an extraordinary achievement that few civilizations have matched. This longevity surely owes something to the culture's ability to preserve what was valuable from the past while adapting to new circumstances as they arose. The social hierarchies we have observed are clear and well-defined, yet they do not prevent genuine human relationships from developing across status boundaries. Nefret and Merit occupy very different positions in the social structure, yet they interact with mutual respect and even affection. Senenmut wields considerable administrative authority, yet He treats the specialists he supervises as valued colleagues rather than mere subordinates. This suggests that hierarchy and equality are not necessarily opposites, that it is possible to have clear structures of authority and responsibility while still honoring the fundamental humanity of all people. The challenge, it seems, is to structure hierarchies around function and competence rather than arbitrary privilege, and to ensure that those occupying positions of authority exercise it with humility and consideration for those they direct. The attention to beauty and sensory pleasure that permeates palace life is also noteworthy. The carefully prepared foods, the pleasant fragrances, the lovely decorations, the soothing music, these are not frivolous luxuries, but rather essential elements that contribute to psychological well-being and social harmony. The palace culture understands that humans are not purely rational creatures who can function optimally in stark, utilitarian environments. We are sensory beings who respond to beauty, who are calmed by pleasant aromas, who are nourished not just by the nutritional content of our food, but by its appearance and taste. This attention to aesthetic quality extends even to functional objects. The furniture is not just adequately constructed, but beautifully crafted. The clothing is not merely protective, but visually appealing. Even the storage vessels and serving dishes receive decorative treatment. This suggests a culture that rejects the false dichotomy between utility and beauty, recognizing that objects can and should serve both practical and aesthetic purposes. The diplomatic practices we have observed demonstrate sophisticated understanding of human psychology and social dynamics. The careful choreography of receptions, the thoughtful selection of gifts, the strategic use of hospitality to build relationships all reflect centuries of accumulated wisdom about how to conduct international relations effectively. The emphasis on personal connections alongside formal negotiations recognizes that political relationships ultimately depend on human relationships, that treaties and agreements are more likely to be honored when they are grounded in mutual respect and friendship between the individuals who negotiate them. The role of education and specialized knowledge in this society is also significant. Becoming proficient in any of the various palace roles requires years of training and practice. The cosmeticians, the cooks, the textile workers, the administrators all have developed deep expertise in their respective domains. This specialization allows for high levels of quality and efficiency while also providing individuals with clear career paths and opportunities for advancement based on demonstrated competence. Yet this specialization does not lead to isolation or inability to communicate across domains. The various specialists must coordinate their efforts constantly, which requires them to understand at least the basics of each other's work. Settlement cannot effectively coordinate palace operations without understanding something about food preparation, textile production, building maintenance, and numerous other areas. This combination of deep specialization and broad understanding creates a workforce that is both highly skilled and adaptable. The treatment of time in this culture differs markedly from modern approaches. There is no sense of frantic rushing, no obsession with maximizing productivity in every moment. Activities unfold at their natural pace. Nefert's morning preparations take 2 hours, not because anyone is being wasteful or inefficient, but because that is the time required to do the work properly and mindfully. The midday rest period is not seen as stolen time that could be used more productively, but rather as a necessary accommodation to natural human rhythms and environmental conditions. This more relaxed relationship with time does not lead to less being accomplished. On the contrary, the palace manages complex operations effectively while maintaining high standards of quality. The difference is that productivity is achieved through sustainable practices rather than through constant pressure and stress. People work diligently during their working hours, but are also given adequate time for rest, recreation, and personal pursuits. The integration of physical and mental disciplines is another striking feature. The morning routines include not just physical preparation, but also meditation, reflection, and psychological readiness. The culture recognizes that human beings are unified organisms, that mental states affect physical performance and vice versa, that optimal functioning requires attention to both dimensions of existence. The systems of record-keeping and information management that support palace operations are remarkably sophisticated for a pre-industrial society. The detailed files on foreign dignitaries, the inventory systems for supplies, the administrative reports that flow constantly through various departments all demonstrate impressive organizational capabilities. These systems allow the palace to function as a complex institution rather than as a mere household, to coordinate activities across time and space, to learn from past experience and plan for future contingencies. Yet these bureaucratic systems do not become ends in themselves. They remain tools in service of larger purposes rather than masters that dominate human activity. The administrators who maintain these systems understand that their ultimate goal is to support human flourishing, not simply to generate ever more elaborate documentation. The community life that exists among palace servants is also worth noting. Merritt's experience illustrates how even those in subordinate positions can find dignity, purpose, and satisfaction in their work. The servants are not isolated in their individual tasks, but rather form communities of mutual support. They share meals together, exchange information, maintain friendships, celebrate each other's successes. This social dimension transforms what might otherwise be mere drudgery into work that has meaning and provides connection. The spiritual framework that undergirds all these activities provides a sense of transcendent purpose that elevates everyday life. When Merritt prays at the servant's shrine before beginning her day's work, she is connecting her individual efforts to cosmic purposes. This doesn't mean that she approaches her work with grim seriousness. Joy and spirituality are not opposites in this worldview, but rather that even routine tasks participate in something larger than themselves. The festivals and celebrations that punctuate the calendar provide necessary breaks from routine, while also strengthening social bonds and reaffirming shared values. The harvest festival we observed serves economic, religious, social, and psychological functions simultaneously. It gives thanks for material abundance while honoring the gods. It brings together people from different social strata while reaffirming hierarchical structures. It provides enjoyment and recreation while maintaining ceremonial dignity. As we reflect on these various aspects of palace life in ancient Kemet, we might ask what relevance they hold for our own time. We cannot and should not attempt to recreate ancient societies in the modern world. Too much has changed, and many ancient practices would be inappropriate or impossible in contemporary contexts. Yet the underlying principles that animated Kemetic palace life may still offer valuable insights. The integration of different life dimensions, the balance between structure and flexibility, the attention to beauty and sensory experience, the respect for specialized knowledge, the sustainable approach to productivity, the recognition of human wholeness. These principles remain relevant regardless of technological or social changes. They speak to enduring truths about human nature and human needs. Perhaps the greatest lesson is simply that it is possible to create social institutions that honor both individual dignity and collective purpose, that provide both stability and space for growth, that achieve practical objectives while attending to psychological and spiritual dimensions of existence. Ancient Kemet was not a utopia. It had its share of problems and injustices, as all human societies do, but it demonstrates that thoughtful attention to how we organize our collective lives can yield remarkable results. The palace we have explored exists now only in ruins and in written records. Its inhabitants long since returned to dust. Yet the wisdom embedded in their practices, the principles that guided their daily lives, these remain available to us. In the quiet moments before sleep, when we step back from the frantic pace of modern existence, we can reflect on what we have learned from these long-ago people who lived so differently yet faced many of the same fundamental human challenges that we face today. Their careful morning rituals remind us of the importance of beginning each day with intention rather than rushing immediately into activity. Their communal meals remind us that eating is not just biological necessity, but social and spiritual practice. Their attention to beauty reminds us that aesthetics matter, that humans need not just functional efficiency, but also sensory pleasure. Their administrative systems remind us that good organization enables rather than constrains human flourishing. Their diplomatic practices remind us that relationships matter, that political structures depend ultimately on human connections. As the night deepens and sleep draws near, we can carry these lessons with us into rest. We can appreciate the wisdom of ancient peoples who built enduring civilizations by attending carefully to both practical necessities and deeper human needs. We can recognize that progress is not simply linear, that ancient societies sometimes understood things that modern ones have forgotten or neglected. The palace corridors stand empty now, no longer echoing with footsteps and conversation. The gardens have returned to desert. The pools no longer reflect changing skies. Yet in imagination and in the careful study of their remnants, we can still walk those corridors, still sit in those gardens, still observe the daily rhythms of lives lived with intention and meaning. Let these images accompany you into sleep. The gentle sounds of water flowing, the soft light of oil lamps, the pleasant fragrance of lotus flowers, the quiet competence of people attending skillfully to their various responsibilities, the sense of participating in something larger than oneself, of contributing to patterns that extend across generations, of living in harmony with cosmic rhythms and human communities. Rest now, knowing that humans have always sought to create meaningful lives within whatever circumstances they found themselves. Rest knowing that wisdom accumulates across centuries and remains available to those who seek it with patience and respect. Rest knowing that tomorrow will bring its own opportunities to live with intention, to balance competing demands, to honor both individual needs and collective purposes. The ancient Kemetic blessing speaks of living in truth, of walking in beauty, of dwelling in peace. May such blessings attend your own journey through life. May your rest be deep and restorative. May you wake refreshed and ready to engage thoughtfully with whatever the new day brings. And so our gentle journey through palace corridors concludes, as all journeys must. The story fades like lamplight at dawn, leaving only peaceful darkness and the steady rhythm of breath. Sleep well, traveler, through time. Sleep well, retry. This moment of spiritual preparation is important to Merit. It helps her transition from her own private concerns to the focus on service that her work requires. It reminds her that her labor, though directed toward serving an individual, ultimately contributes to the well-being of the entire kingdom by supporting those who guide its affairs. With her preparations complete, Merit proceeds to Nefret's chambers, moving silently through corridors that are still dim in the pre-dawn darkness. She enters the sleeping chamber quietly, careful not to disturb her mistress prematurely. She begins the process of opening windows, lighting lamps, and preparing the space for Nefret's awakening, all with movements so practiced and smooth that they create barely a whisper of sound. Throughout the morning ritual of bathing, cosmetics, and dressing, Merit's attention remains focused entirely on Nefret's needs. She anticipates requirements before they are voiced. She notices tiny details of expression or posture that might indicate discomfort or concern. She offers suggestions when appropriate, but never presumes to make decisions that properly belong to her. Mistress, this level of attentive service requires skills that are not innate but must be learned through years of practice. Merit must understand not just the technical aspects of her work, how to arrange hair, apply cosmetics, select appropriate clothing, but also the psychological dimensions. She must be able to read Nefret's moods and adjust her approach accordingly. On days when Nefret seems anxious about upcoming challenges, Merit's manner becomes particularly reassuring and supportive. On days when Nefret is feeling confident and energetic, Merit matches that energy while still maintaining appropriate respectfulness. The relationship between Nefret and Merit illustrates the complex nature of hierarchical relationships in ancient Kemetic society. There is no question about the difference in their social positions. Nefret is a noblewoman, born into privilege and destined for a life of influence and comfort. Merit is a servant whose life circumstances are far more modest. Yet within the context of their daily interactions, there exists genuine mutual respect and even a form of friendship. Nefret treats Merit with courtesy and consideration, recognizing that her own ability to fulfill her social and political obligations depends heavily on the quality of service Merit provides. Merit, for her part, takes pride in serving someone she genuinely respects and admires. The relationship works because both parties understand and accept their respective roles while honoring the humanity of the other. During the portions of the day when Nefret is engaged in activities that do not require Merit's direct attendance, Merit has her own responsibilities to attend to. She supervises the other servants who maintain Nefret's apartments, ensuring that cleaning is done thoroughly, that linens are changed regularly, that clothing and jewelry are properly stored and maintained. She also manages the household supplies, keeping track of the oils, unguents, cosmetics, perfumes, and other items that are consumed in daily routines. When supplies run low, she must requisition replacements from the palace's central stores, ensuring that there is never a shortage of any needed item. This inventory management might seem mundane, but it requires careful attention and good organizational skills. Additionally, Merit serves as a communication link between Nefret and various other parts of the palace organization. When Nefret needs to send a message to someone, she often entrusts it to Merit rather than going through more formal channels. When someone wishes to speak with Nefret, they might first approach Merit to arrange an appropriate time. This intermediary role requires discretion and good judgment, as Merit must protect her mistress from unnecessary interruptions while ensuring that important matters receive appropriate attention. Merit's midday meal is taken in the servants' dining area, a large room where household staff gather to eat and socialize. The food served here is simpler than what is provided to the noble members of the household, but it is still of good quality and adequate quantity. Bread, vegetables, occasionally some fish or fowl. Beer to drink, sometimes supplemented with water. These communal meals serve important social functions for the palace staff. They provide opportunities for servants from different households to exchange information and maintain friendships. They create a sense of community and shared purpose among people whose work might otherwise be quite isolated. Merit particularly values these midday gatherings as chances to maintain relationships with other senior servants, connections that can be helpful when coordinating activities that involve multiple households. The conversations during these meals range widely. Personal matters like family health and children's progress, professional concerns like challenging tasks or difficult situations that have arisen, general palace news and gossip. though Merit is always careful to maintain proper discretion regarding her own mistress's private affairs. One of the topics discussed during today's meal is the visiting dignitaries and the various events being organized in their honor. Several of Merit's colleagues are involved in preparing and maintaining the guest quarters, and they share observations about the visitors' preferences and behaviors. This information isn't mere idle gossip. It has practical value for anyone who might need to interact with or serve these guests after the meal. Merit returns to her duties, which this afternoon include preparing Nefret's evening attire and ensuring that all the necessary accessories are ready. She also takes time to visit the palace's cosmetics workshop, where she discusses with the chief cosmetician some adjustments to the perfume blend that Nefret has been using. Nefret has mentioned that the current blend, while pleasant, seems too heavy for the warm weather. Together, Merit and the cosmetician develop a lighter formulation that will be more suitable for the season. This kind of problem-solving is typical of Merit's work. She must constantly attend to small details, making adjustments and improvements that enhance Nefret's comfort and effectiveness. No single one of these details is crucial, but cumulatively, they make a significant difference in the quality of daily life as evening approaches. Merit returns to Nefret's chambers to assist with the transition from afternoon rest to evening activities. She helps Nefret dress in the selected evening attire, makes final adjustments to hair and cosmetics, ensures that all jewelry is properly fastened and positioned. Throughout this process, she maintains a calm, reassuring presence that helps Nefret feel confident and prepared for the social interactions ahead. Once Nefret departs for the evening gathering, Merit's work continues. She tidies the chambers, putting away the daytime clothing and preparing the sleeping chamber for Nefret's eventual return. She ensures that fresh water is available, that the lamps are trimmed and ready to provide appropriate lighting, that everything is arranged to facilitate a smooth transition to sleep when the evening's activities conclude. Merit then has a few hours of personal time before Nefret returns. She might use this time to attend to her own needs, mending her own clothing, visiting the palace's small market where vendors sell various goods to staff members, or simply resting in her own quarters. Tonight, she chooses to visit a friend who serves in another noble household, enjoying conversation and companionship during this brief respite from her duties. When word comes that the evening gathering is concluding, Merit returns to Nefret's chambers to be ready when her mistress arrives. The evening rituals of removing jewelry and cosmetics, changing into sleeping attire, and preparing for rest require the same careful attention as the morning preparations, though they proceed more quickly since Nefret is tired and ready for sleep. Once Nefret is settled for the night, Merit performs a final check of the chambers, ensuring that everything is secure and comfortable. She then retires to her own quarters, a small but adequate room within the servants' wing of the palace. Her own evening routine is brief and simple, followed by sleep that will restore her energy for another day of service. Our journey through palace life in ancient Kemet would be incomplete without considering the broader context in which all these activities take place. The palace is not an isolated entity, but rather one part of a complex civilization that extends far beyond its walls. To understand palace life fully, we must consider its connections to the wider world of the kingdom. The palace's food supplies, for example, come from agricultural estates scattered throughout the river valley. These estates are managed by administrators who must ensure that crops are planted, tended, harvested, and transported to wherever they are needed. The rhythm of agricultural work follows the annual cycle of the river's flooding, which deposits rich sediment across the fields and provides the moisture necessary for crops to grow. The flooding typically begins in the summer months, when snowmelt from distant mountains far to the south swells the river's volume. The water spreads across the flat valley floor, covering the fields with a shallow lake that persists for several weeks. When the water finally recedes, it leaves behind a layer of fertile silt, dark and rich with nutrients. This is when the planting season begins. Kemet responds with his own formal greeting, thanking his hosts for their hospitality and expressing his delegation's eagerness to strengthen the bonds of friendship between their two peoples. Like Amenhotep, he strikes a balance between warmth and formality, personal feeling and official capacity. Following these opening exchanges, servants enter bearing trays laden with refreshments. Cups of wine mixed with water, as is customary for formal occasions. Small plates of dates, figs, and other delicacies. These are not the main food of a meal, but rather symbolic offerings of hospitality. The act of sharing food and drink together is significant, representing the establishment of a peaceful, cooperative relationship. As the refreshments are distributed and consumed, the formal atmosphere of the reception begins to relax slightly. Conversation becomes more natural and less scripted. Amenhotep inquires about conditions in the copper-producing regions. Are the mines yielding good ore? Have there been any difficulties with transport or labor? Kemet responds with general information, touching on recent developments without going into excessive detail. That would be more appropriate for technical discussions. In turn, Kemet asks about conditions in Kemet. How has the recent flooding of the river been? Are the agricultural projections for the harvest favorable? Amenhotep provides reassuring responses, painting a picture of stability and prosperity without boasting or exaggerating. These exchanges might seem like mere small talk, but they serve important diplomatic functions. They allow each side to assess the other's current situation and concerns. They establish a foundation of basic information that will inform more detailed negotiations to follow. After perhaps an hour of such conversation, Amenhotep signals that the formal reception portion of the visit has concluded. He invites the visitors to tour certain areas of the palace complex, including the gardens and some of the workshops where various crafts are practiced. This tour serves multiple purposes. It demonstrates Kemetic prosperity and capability. It provides the visitors with a break from the formality of the reception chamber. And it creates opportunities for more casual conversation as they move from place to place. Nefret and several other members of the royal household join the tour group. As they walk through the palace gardens, Nefret finds herself walking alongside one of the visitors, a younger man who serves as an advisor to Kemet. They exchange pleasantries about the beauty of the gardens and the cleverness of the irrigation systems that keep them flourishing even in the dry season. The conversation flows naturally into other topics. The advisor mentions that he has heard of Kemet's renowned libraries and expresses interest in seeing them if possible. Nefret explains that while the most sacred and secret texts are kept in temple libraries accessible only to priests, there are other collections that scholars may consult with appropriate permission. She offers to arrange such access if he would like to spend some time studying during his delegation's stay in the capital. This seemingly casual exchange is actually a form of diplomatic work. By offering this courtesy, Nefret strengthens the personal connection between the two sides. She demonstrates that Kemet values knowledge and is willing to share its intellectual resources with foreign friends. She creates a sense of obligation in the visitor, who will feel grateful for the favor and possibly more inclined to take a generous position in subsequent negotiations. The tour continues through various parts of the palace complex. The visitors see craftsmen at work, weaving fine linen, crafting jewelry, carving furniture. These workshops are not normally located within the palace itself, but selected artisans have been brought in specifically to provide this demonstration. The message is clear. Kemet possesses remarkable human resources, skilled workers capable of producing goods of exceptional quality. As midday approaches and the heat intensifies, The tour concludes, and the visitors are shown to the guest quarters that have been prepared for them. These apartments are spacious and comfortable, decorated in a style that honors the visitor's homeland while also showcasing Kemetic aesthetic sensibilities. Servants are assigned to attend to their needs, ensuring they have everything required for a comfortable stay. Nefret returns to her own chambers for the midday rest period. The heat of the middle hours of the day makes strenuous activity uncomfortable, so it is customary for most people to seek shade and rest during this time. Nefret reclines on cushioned furniture in her coolest chamber, the one that receives the best cross breeze from the courtyard. She might sleep lightly for a while, or she might simply lie quietly, allowing her mind to wander without particular focus or direction. This rest period is not wasted time. It serves important physiological functions, allowing the body to conserve energy during the hottest part of the day. It also provides mental rest, a break from the constant social and intellectual demands of palace life. When Nefret rises in the late afternoon, she will feel refreshed and ready for the evening's activities. As the sun begins its descent toward the western horizon and the air cools slightly, palace life resumes its more active pace. Nefret's attendants help her change from her formal reception attire into something more suitable for the evening. The evening entertainment will be less formal than the morning reception, but it still requires appropriate dress and grooming. The evening gathering will take place in another part of the palace complex, an area designed specifically for entertainment and relaxation. The main feature is a large courtyard surrounded by covered walkways supported by columns. In the center of the courtyard is a pool fed by a channel from the river. The water is filtered and constantly refreshed, keeping it clean and cool. Around the pool, date palms and other trees provide shade, and flowering plants fill the air with gentle fragrance. As dusk falls, servants light the many oil lamps positioned throughout the space. The flickering light creates a magical atmosphere, transforming the familiar daytime courtyard into something mysterious and enchanting. Musicians take their positions in one of the covered walkways, ready to provide entertainment throughout the evening. The guests begin to arrive as full darkness settles over the palace. In addition to the visiting dignitaries and various members of the royal household, there are several other groups represented. Prominent merchants whose business interests align with the topics under discussion. Religious officials whose blessings add spiritual weight to diplomatic agreements. Even a few foreign residents of the capital. Individuals from other lands who have chosen to make Kemet their home and who can provide additional perspectives on international relations. The evening proceeds without rigid structure. There are no formal speeches or ceremonial proceedings. Instead, people move freely around the courtyard, gathering in small groups for conversation, then drifting apart to form new combinations. The musicians play continuously, providing a pleasant background that encourages conversation without overwhelming it. Servants circulate with trays of food and drink, ensuring that everyone's needs are met without being intrusive. The food served in the evening is different from the morning's fare. Cold dishes are preferred in the warm night air. Roasted duck that has been allowed to cool, served with a sauce made from dates and spices. Fresh fish prepared with herbs and lemon. Salads of cucumbers and onions dressed with oil and vinegar. Bread, always bread in countless varieties. For dessert, dishes sweetened with honey, flavored with nuts and dried fruits. The wine flows more freely than it did at the morning reception, though never to excess. These are diplomatic occasions, after all, and maintaining proper dignity is essential. The wine served is of excellent quality, drawn from amphorae that bear seals indicating specific vineyards known for producing superior grapes. The act of sharing fine wine demonstrates hospitality and generosity while also showcasing Kemet's access to luxury goods from various regions. As the evening progresses, Nefret finds herself in conversation with Kemet, the leader of the visiting delegation. They have drifted to a quiet corner of the courtyard, where the music is softer and conversation easier. They discuss the changes they have each observed over their lifetimes, the ways in which trade has expanded, the increasing complexity of diplomatic relationships, the gradual accumulation of knowledge about distant lands. Kemet mentions that his own father had visited Kemet many years ago, during the reign of the previous king. He remembers his father's stories about the majesty of the temples, the abundance of the harvests, the sophistication of the court. He expresses his pleasure at seeing these things for himself and finding that his father's descriptions, if anything, understated the reality. Nefert accepts these compliments graciously, acknowledging that Kemet has been blessed by the gods with a rich land and capable people. She reciprocates by expressing admiration for the skill with which Kemet's people extract and refine copper from the earth, a difficult and dangerous process that requires both courage and technical expertise. The work is intellectually demanding, requiring constant attention and careful judgment. Yet Kemet finds it deeply satisfying. He is contributing to the smooth functioning of the royal household, which in turn supports the governance of the entire kingdom. His efforts, though largely invisible to those outside the administrative circles, make possible all the more visible achievements of Kemetic civilization. As midday approaches, Kemet sets aside his paperwork to attend a meeting with other senior administrators. These regular gatherings serve to coordinate activities across different departments and ensure that everyone remains informed about significant developments. The meetings are held in a chamber designed specifically for this purpose, furnished with comfortable seating arranged in a circle that allows all participants to see and hear each other easily. Today's meeting includes representatives from several different areas of palace operations. The master builder provides an update on construction projects. The chief of palace security reports on any potential threats or concerns. The head of the household staff discusses staffing matters and training programs for new servants. The keeper of the granaries reviews food supply projections for the coming months. Each report is delivered concisely, focusing on information that is relevant to the group as a whole rather than details that concern only the specific department. After each report, the other administrators have the opportunity to ask questions or raise issues where coordination between departments might be needed. Kemet, as the chief administrator, facilitates the discussion, ensuring that all voices are heard, while keeping the meeting moving forward efficiently. These meetings might continue for an hour or even two, depending on the complexity of the matters under discussion. Today's meeting concludes after about 90 minutes. With all participants having gained useful information and established clear plans for addressing various issues that require interdepartmental cooperation. Following the meeting, Kemet takes his midday meal in his office, eating while continuing to work through the stack of documents that requires his attention. The meal is simple but nutritious. Bread with cheese, a few dates, a cup of beer, the common beverage of ancient Kemet, made from fermented grain and providing both hydration and modest nutritional value. The afternoon hours pass in steady work. More documents are read and responded to. Several individuals come to Kemet's office seeking advice or approval for various matters. A junior administrator needs guidance on how to handle a dispute between two craftsmen working in the same workshop. A merchant seeks permission to set up a temporary stall within the palace complex to display goods that might be of interest to the royal household. A temple official wants to discuss arrangements for an upcoming religious festival that will require palace participation. Each visitor receives Kemet's full attention for the duration of their meeting. He listens carefully to their presentations, asks clarifying questions when needed, and provides clear decisions or guidance. His manner is professional but not cold, authoritative but not domineering. He understands that his effectiveness depends not just on his own skills, but on his ability to inspire confidence and cooperation from the many people whose work he coordinates. As the afternoon wanes and the heat begins to diminish, Kemet finally allows himself a break from the constant flow of administrative work. He walks through the palace gardens, following shaded paths that wind among flowering plants and fruit trees. The gardens are maintained by specialized workers who understand the specific needs of different plants, ensuring that everything flourishes despite the challenging climate. This walk serves both physical and mental purposes. The physical movement helps counter the effects of spending long hours seated at a desk. The natural beauty of the gardens provides psychological refreshment, offering a respite from the constant mental demands of administrative work. Kemet finds that some of his best thinking occurs during these quiet walks, when his mind is free to make connections and see patterns that might not be apparent during focused work on specific problems. As evening approaches, Kemet returns to his chambers to prepare for the evening's social obligations. Like Nefert, he must change from his daytime working attire into clothing more suitable for formal social occasions. His attendant helps him with this transformation, ensuring that his appearance meets the standards expected of someone in his position. Kemet's evening attire is simpler than what a noblewoman like Nefert would wear, reflecting both his gender and his more administrative role. A fresh white kilt, carefully pleated. A broad collar of beads, though less elaborate than those worn by the highest nobles. Simple sandals of good quality leather. His natural hair is trimmed, short in a style that is both practical and dignified. The evening gathering that Kemet will attend is the same one where Nefert is present, though his role differs from hers. While she focuses on maintaining cordial relationships with the visiting dignitaries and creating a welcoming atmosphere, Kemet's participation serves different purposes. He observes how the various logistical arrangements are functioning. He remains alert for any problems that might arise and require immediate attention. He makes himself available to answer questions about palace procedures or to facilitate connections between people who might benefit from speaking with each other. Throughout the evening, Kemet moves quietly through the gathering, rarely drawing attention to himself, but always aware of what is happening in different parts of the courtyard. When he notices that the supply of a particular food is running low, he signals discreetly to a servant to bring more. When he sees a guest looking somewhat lost or uncomfortable, he approaches and offers gentle assistance, perhaps introducing them to someone with shared interests or guiding them toward a quieter area if they seem overwhelmed by the crowd. This attentive hospitality is an art form in itself, requiring both social sensitivity and practical competence. Kemet must read the unspoken needs and feelings of dozens of people simultaneously, while ensuring that the logistical machinery supporting the event continues to function smoothly. It is exhausting work in its way, requiring constant vigilance and frequent small decisions. Yet it appears effortless to those who benefit from it. As the evening concludes and guests begin to depart, Kemet remains until the very end, ensuring that final courtesies are properly observed and that the cleanup process begins efficiently. Only when the last guest is left and the servants have begun clearing away the remnants of the gathering does he finally allow himself to return to his own chambers for the night. His evening routine is simpler than Nefert's, reflecting both his gender and his less ceremonial role. A brief wash to remove the day's accumulated sweat and dust. A simple sleeping garment. A few minutes of quiet reflection, reviewing the day's events and thinking ahead to tomorrow's challenges. Then sleep, the necessary restoration that will prepare him for another day of service to the royal household. As we continue our gentle journey through palace life in ancient Kemet, Let us turn our attention to the world of those who support all these activities from less visible positions. Consider Merit, Nefret's chief attendant, whose role we have glimpsed but not yet fully explored. Her life offers a different perspective on palace existence, one that is no less important but operates according to different rhythms and different priorities. Merit's heritage represents a common pattern in ancient Kemetic society. Her grandmother had been a palace servant, earning a reputation for exceptional skill and reliability. Her mother had continued in palace service, benefiting from the favorable reputation her mother had established. Merit herself entered palace service as a young woman, starting in less prestigious positions and gradually working her way upward through demonstrated competence and dedication. Her current position as chief attendant to a high-ranking noblewoman is both a privilege and a responsibility. It provides her with comfortable living quarters within the palace complex, regular meals of good quality, and a respected social position. In return, she dedicates herself fully to ensuring that Nefret's needs are met and that her household runs smoothly. Merit's day begins even earlier than Nefret's or Senemut's. She must be awake and prepared before Nefret stirs, ready to begin the morning rituals at the appropriate moment. Her own morning preparations are simpler than those she will later perform for her mistress, but they follow similar principles. A quick wash with cool water to clear away the remnants of sleep. A simple linen dress, clean and well-maintained, but without elaborate decoration. Her hair arranged in a practical style that will remain neat throughout the day's activities. Before going to Nefret's chambers, Merit stops briefly in the small shrine maintained by the household servants. Here, a statue of Hathor stands in a niche, receiving the devotions of those who serve the palace's noble residents. Merit offers a brief prayer, asking for the goddess's blessing on the day's work and expressing gratitude for the opportunity to serve in a position of trust and responsibility. This mutual expression of respect and admiration is central to successful diplomacy. Each side must feel that the other recognizes and values their contributions. When this foundation is established, the specific details of trade agreements become much easier to negotiate. Both sides enter the discussions with a presumption of good faith and mutual benefit rather than suspicion and zero-sum thinking. As the night grows late, the gathering begins to disperse naturally. The musicians conclude their performance with a final, gentle melody. Servants extinguish some of the lamps, creating a subtle signal that the evening is concluding. Guests begin to make their farewells, expressing gratitude for the hospitality and looking forward to the next day's activities. Nefret returns once again to her chambers for the evening rituals that will prepare her for sleep. Merit and the other attendants help her remove her jewelry and clothing, carefully storing each piece in its proper place. The cosmetics are gently cleaned from her face using soft cloths moistened with oil. The wig, if she has worn one, is removed and placed on its stand to maintain its shape. A final application of soothing oil helps her skin recover from the day's activities. The oil used in the evening is different from the morning's preparation, selected for its restorative properties rather than its fragrance or decorative qualities. It soaks into the skin, providing moisture and nourishment that will support the body's natural processes of repair and renewal. During sleep, the sleeping chamber has been prepared during her absence. The linens have been refreshed. The windows have been adjusted to allow the cool night air to circulate while preventing insects from entering. Small lamps burn quietly, providing just enough light to move about safely without creating brightness that might interfere with sleep. Nefret settles onto her sleeping couch, a low bed constructed from a wooden frame, strung with woven cords that provide support while allowing air to circulate beneath. A light covering of linen provides warmth without excessive weight. As she closes her eyes, She can hear the distant sound of water flowing in the courtyard fountain, the soft calls of night birds, the gentle rustling of palm fronds in the evening breeze. Sleep comes gradually, naturally, as it should. Her mind drifts through impressions of the day, the morning preparations, the diplomatic reception, the evening gathering. Tomorrow will bring new activities, new conversations, new opportunities to serve her role within the complex web of palace life. But for now, there is only rest, only the peaceful darkness, only the gentle transition into dreams. Let us now turn our attention to another figure in this ancient world, a man named Kemet, who holds the position of chief administrator for the royal household. His responsibilities are numerous and varied, encompassing everything from overseeing the palace's food supplies to coordinating the schedules of the various officials who serve the crown. It is demanding work, requiring exceptional organizational skills, diplomatic tact, and the ability to make sound judgments quickly when unexpected situations arise. Kemet's day begins even earlier than Nefert's, before the first light of dawn touches the eastern horizon. This early start is necessary because he must review reports that have been compiled during the night by various officials responsible for different aspects of palace operations. These reports cover a wide range of topics: the current levels of grain in the palace granaries, the status of ongoing construction projects, any unusual incidents that occurred during the night watch, messages that have arrived from distant provinces. Kemet sits in his private office, a room lined with shelves holding countless scrolls and tablets. The walls are plain, without the elaborate decorations found in more public areas of the palace. This is a working space, designed for efficiency rather than impression. A single oil lamp provides illumination, casting a warm glow over the papyrus documents spread across his desk. As he reads through the reports, Kemet makes notes on a separate sheet of papyrus, recording matters that will require his personal attention during the day ahead. The grain supplies are adequate for the current season, but advanced planning suggests they should begin negotiating with agricultural administrators in the southern provinces to secure the next harvest. One of the construction projects, in addition to the temple complex, has encountered an unexpected difficulty with the foundation that will require consultation with the master builders. These administrative matters might seem mundane compared to the grand diplomatic receptions and ceremonial occasions that capture more attention, but they are the foundation upon which everything else rests. Without adequate food supplies, the palace could not host visitors or feed its staff. Without well-maintained buildings, the ceremonial occasions would lack appropriate settings. The unglamorous work of administration makes possible all the more visible activities of court life. As dawn breaks, Kemet sets aside the overnight reports and prepares for his morning rounds. He will visit various parts of the palace complex, observing conditions with his own eyes, speaking with the officials and workers who carry out the daily tasks that keep the entire operation functioning. This direct observation is essential. Written reports can miss important details or fail to convey the full significance of developing situations. His first stop is the palace kitchens, where preparations for the day's meals are already well underway. The kitchen complex is vast, with separate areas for different types of food preparation. In one section, bakers are working with dough that has been rising overnight, shaping it into loaves that will be baked in large ovens heated by charcoal fires. In another area, cooks are preparing vegetables, chopping onions and garlic, cleaning fresh herbs brought in from the palace gardens. Butchers are working with meat that was delivered before dawn, preparing it according to the day's menu plans. The head cook, a man named Kemet, who has held this position for more than 15 years, greets Kemet with respectful familiarity. They have worked together for many years, and have developed an efficient working relationship built on mutual trust and respect. Tahota provides a brief summary of the day's plans. The morning meal for the royal household. A midday banquet for the visiting dignitaries. Evening refreshments for what is expected to be a smaller, more intimate gathering. Kemet asks about specific details. Are all the required ingredients available? Are there sufficient staff to handle the workload? Have any unexpected problems arisen? Tahota responds to each question with practiced ease. Yes, everything needed is on hand. The staff levels are appropriate. One of the ovens developed a crack in its lining yesterday, but it has already been repaired and is functioning normally. This conversation takes only a few minutes, but it serves important purposes. Kemet maintains awareness of kitchen operations, ensuring that potential problems are identified and addressed before they can affect the quality of meals served. Tahota has his work validated and receives assurance that his efforts are noticed and appreciated by the palace administration. The relationship between administrator and specialist is maintained in good health. Kemet continues his rounds, visiting the workshops where craftsmen produce the various goods needed for palace operations. In one workshop, carpenters are constructing furniture to replace pieces that have become worn or damaged through years of use. In another, textile workers are weaving linen of various grades for different purposes. A third workshop houses the palace's cosmeticians, who prepare the oils, unguents, and cosmetics used by members of the royal household at each location. Kemet follows a similar pattern. He observes the work being done. He speaks with the master craftsperson responsible for the workshop. He asks questions about supplies, staffing, and any challenges being faced. He offers praise for good work and helpful suggestions when he identifies areas where improvements might be made. These interactions rarely take more than a quarter hour at each location, but cumulatively they provide Kemet with a comprehensive understanding of operations across the entire palace complex. By the time Kemet completes his morning rounds, the sun has risen well above the horizon and the day's heat is beginning to build. He returns to his office to find that more documents have arrived during his absence. Letters from provincial administrators requesting approval for various projects. Reports from temple officials regarding religious ceremonies that will require palace participation. Proposals from merchants offering to supply various goods at specified prices. Each document must be read, evaluated, and responded to appropriately. Some decisions Kemet can make on his own authority, based on established policies and his understanding of the palace's needs and resources. Others require consultation with more senior officials or even the king himself. Kemet must discern which category each matter falls into, a skill that comes from years of experience and deep knowledge of both written policies and unwritten customs. The process of preparing one of these wigs for wearing can take considerable time. The piece must be carefully positioned on the head, then secured with pins that are themselves small works of craftsmanship. The attendant must ensure that no natural hair shows beneath the wig, creating a seamless appearance. She must also arrange the decorative elements to achieve the most pleasing visual effect while ensuring they do not cause discomfort to the wearer. While the hair arrangement is being completed, yet another attendant prepares the cosmetics that will be applied to Nefert's face. The cosmetics used in ancient Kemet are quite different from what we might recognize today, yet they serve many of the same purposes. Protection from the harsh sun, enhancement of natural features, expression of personal style and social status. The most distinctive element of Kemetic cosmetics is the elaborate eye makeup. A dark pigment, usually made from ground minerals mixed with oil, is applied around the eyes in distinctive patterns that extend toward the temples. This dramatic effect serves practical purposes as well as aesthetic ones. The dark color helps reduce glare from the intense sunlight. similar to how modern athletes might apply dark strips beneath their eyes. The application of this eye cosmetic is performed with great care and precision. A small stick, sometimes made of wood and sometimes of bronze, is dipped into the pigment mixture. The attendant then draws fine lines along the edges of the eyelids, gradually building up the color through multiple applications. The process requires steady hands and considerable practice to achieve the desired effect. Too much pigment appears harsh and unflattering. Too little fails to provide the distinctive appearance expected of someone of Nefert's status. Other cosmetic preparations are applied to the cheeks and lips, adding subtle color that enhances the natural tones of the skin. These pigments are derived from various mineral and plant sources. Red ochre, a type of clay rich in iron oxide, provides warm reddish tones. Certain plant extracts can create softer pink shades. The selection and application of these colors is guided by principles of harmony and balance that have been developed over many generations. By the time these morning preparations are complete, perhaps 2 hours have passed since Nefert first awakened. This might seem like an extraordinary amount of time to spend on personal care, but in the context of palace life, it is entirely appropriate. These rituals serve multiple purposes beyond the obvious ones. They provide time for quiet reflection and mental preparation for the day ahead. They maintain traditional practices that connect the present generation to countless generations that came before. They demonstrate the importance of the individual within the complex social structures of the kingdom. And perhaps most importantly, they create a sense of order and predictability in a world that can often seem chaotic and uncertain. With her physical preparation complete, Nefert now turns her attention to the selection of clothing for the day. Her wardrobe chamber is adjacent to her sleeping quarters, a room lined with wooden chests and cabinets containing garments for every possible occasion. The basic garment worn by noble women in ancient Kemet is a simple sheath dress, a tube of linen that falls from just below the breasts to the ankles. However, the simplicity of the basic design allows for infinite variation in the details. The quality of the linen can vary tremendously. The finest linen, reserved for the most formal occasions, is woven so finely that it is nearly transparent, creating an ethereal appearance that suggests divine favor. Coarser grades of linen, while still of excellent quality, provide more coverage and are more suitable for everyday activities. The color of the fabric is another variable. Pure white is always acceptable and often preferred for its associations with purity and divine light. However, garments might also be dyed in various colors using pigments extracted from plants, minerals, and even certain shellfish for today's activities, which will include receiving visiting dignitaries from a neighboring region. Merit recommends a dress of very fine white linen with a pleated overlay that creates visual interest without being overly elaborate. The pleating is itself a remarkable achievement of ancient textile work. The fabric is folded into precise creases, then treated with special preparations that help the pleats hold their shape even in humid conditions or after extended wear. Over the dress, Nefert will wear a broad collar, a piece of jewelry that is characteristic of ancient Kemetic noble attire. These collars are constructed from multiple strands of beads, arranged in concentric semicircles that rest across the shoulders and upper chest. The beads might be made from many different materials. Faience, a type of glazed ceramic that can be produced in brilliant blues and greens. Carnelian, a reddish stone valued for its warm color. Gold, hammered into small tubes or shaped into tiny decorative elements. The pattern created by these various materials is not random. It follows established principles of design that balance color, texture, and symbolic meaning. The selection of the appropriate collar for today's occasion requires consideration of several factors. The visiting dignitaries come from a region that has long-standing trade relationships with Kemet, so it would be appropriate to include some beads made from materials that are known to come from their homeland, demonstrating respect for their culture and acknowledgement of the beneficial exchange between the two peoples. At the same time, the collar should display enough gold and precious materials to make clear Kemet's prosperity and the high status of its ruling class, thereby reinforcing the kingdom's position of strength in any negotiations that might arise during the visit. Additional jewelry is selected with similar care. Bracelets for the wrists and upper arms. Anklets that will create a soft, pleasant sound when Nefert walks. Rings for her fingers, some purely decorative and others bearing carved seals that can be used to mark official documents with her personal symbol. Each piece serves both aesthetic and practical purposes, creating a complete ensemble that communicates volumes about the wearer's identity, status, and intentions. The final element of Nefert's morning preparation is a light application of perfume. The perfumes of ancient Kemet are quite different from modern fragrances. They are typically oil-based rather than alcohol-based, which means they release their scent gradually over many hours rather than an initial burst that quickly fades. The oils used as a base are carefully selected for their neutral character, so they do not interfere with the desired fragrance. Commonly used base oils include those extracted from moringa seeds and from almonds. The scents themselves come from a wide variety of sources. Flowers such as lotus and lily provide delicate, fresh aromas. Tree resins like frankincense and myrrh contribute deep, mysterious notes. Spices such as cinnamon and cassia add warmth and complexity. A skilled perfumer, one who is trained for years in this specialized craft, can combine these various elements to create fragrances that are perfectly suited to different occasions and different individuals. For Nefert's meeting with the foreign dignitaries, Marit selects a perfume that balances welcoming warmth with dignified reserve. It contains notes of lotus flower, which is closely associated with Kemet and its great river, along with a subtle hint of myrrh, which is prized throughout the ancient world and thus serves as a common ground between different cultures. A tiny amount of cinnamon adds just a suggestion of spice, creating interest without overwhelming the senses. The perfume is applied to Nefert's wrists, behind her ears, and at the base of her throat. These pulse points, where blood vessels run close to the surface of the skin, generate gentle warmth that helps release the fragrance gradually throughout the day. The application is done sparingly. The goal is to create a subtle aura of pleasant scent that becomes apparent only when someone is quite close, not to announce one's presence from across a room. With her physical preparation complete, Nefert is ready to begin the day's activities. She makes her way through the palace corridors toward the dining area where the morning meal will be served. The corridors themselves are works of art, their walls covered with painted scenes and carved reliefs that tell stories of the kingdom's history and mythology. The floor is paved with smooth stones that remain comfortably cool even as the day grows warmer. At intervals along the corridor, tall stands hold oil lamps that provide illumination during the evening hours and early morning, though at this time of day, natural light filtering through high windows is sufficient. The dining chamber, where Nefert takes her morning meal, is a pleasant space designed to accommodate anywhere from a handful to several dozen people, depending on the occasion. This morning, she will be joined by several other members of the royal household, along with a few visiting scholars who have come to the palace to consult its extensive library and archives. The chamber is open on one side to a courtyard garden, allowing the morning breeze to circulate freely.